In this video, we'll continue to look at binomial probabilities, and we'll answer the second part to the question that we started in the last video. So the question we want to answer is, what is the probability that Albert Pujols gets at least 2 hits in his next 6 at-bats? So this is very similar to the question that we answered in the last video, which was what was the probability that he gets exactly 2 hits. So the main difference here is that we want at least 2 hits. And so what at least 2 hits means is either he'll get 2 hits, or 3 hits, or 4 hits, or 5 hits, or 6 hits. And any one of those satisfies at least 2 hits. And so that's why we'll need to do this one a little bit differently than we did the last one. Now, to answer this question, what we're going to do is first answer a very similar question, and then we'll come back to how we're going to answer this question. So the first question we're going to answer is actually, what is the probability that he gets less than 2 hits in his next 6 at-bats? Which is actually the exact opposite of the original question that we were asked. So the probability that he gets less than 2 hits would be the probability that he gets either 0 hits or just 1 hit. And the reason we want to find this probability first is because this probability is significantly easier to find and will help us to find the other probability. So we have a second function on our graphing calculator, similar to the binomial PDF function that we used in the last video. The function that we're going to use here is the binomial CDF function. The C stands for cumulative, so that's the binomial distribution. It's the cumulative density function. Cumulative meaning to add up. And so what this function does is it sums up a couple of different probabilities. In our case, it's going to sum up the probabilities of him getting 0 hits or 1 hit. So the way this works is very similar to the binomial PDF function. The first thing we'll put in is N, the number of trials, then P, the probability of success, and then X. However, in this function, the binomial CDF function, X stands for the number of successes or fewer we want. So we want X or fewer successes. If you remember from the last video, X stood for exactly how many successes we wanted. So if we want to calculate the probability that Albert gets 0 or 1 hits, what we want to do is binomial CDF. There's 6 trials because we're going up to bat 6 times. The probability of success was his batting average, 0.320. And then we want 1 or fewer successes since we're looking for him getting 0 or 1 hit. So we can calculate this in our graphing calculator. And this function is in the same place as our binomial PDF function. So on our calculator, we'll go to second and then distributions. And then we want to go to the binomial CDF function. And so our number of trials here is 6. Our probability of success is 0.320. And then the number of successes or fewer that we want is 1. And so again, some of you may not have this menu option here, but you can just type it in, same 3 numbers as we did in the last video. And so what we get is this probability is about 0.3780. All right, so now we found the probability that he gets less than 2 hits. But again, that was the opposite of what we actually wanted in the problem. Let's go back up to our original question. We wanted to know, what is the probability that he gets at least 2 hits? And so at least 2 hits, again, is anywhere between 2 and 6 hits. So if we think about it, he has to get somewhere between 0 and 6 hits in his next 6 at-bats. So what we can tell from this is that the probability of Albert getting 0 or 1 hit plus the probability that he gets anywhere between 2 and 6 hits has to equal 1. There has to be a 100% chance that he gets one of those things, somewhere between 0 and 6. So what we can do is use just some simple algebra to solve for the probability that he gets between 2 and 6 hits. And the way we'll do that is by subtracting the probability that he gets 0 or 1 hits from both sides. So once we do that, we'll get the probability of 2 through 6 is equal to 1 minus the probability that he gets 0 or 1 hits. And we still have that number on our calculator, so the way we can calculate this is just by pressing 1 minus and then go second and then the answer key. And so that brings up our answer from the previous line. And what we get is that the probability that he would get 2 or more hits, somewhere between 2 and 6 hits, is about 0.6220. And so that would be the probability that Albert Pujols gets at least 2 hits in his next 6 at-bats. So again, the main difference between this video and the last one was in this video we wanted to see the probability that he gets at least 2 hits. And so anytime we're looking at a cumulative number of probabilities, we want to use the binomial CDF function. And when we're looking at exactly one probability, we want to use the binomial PDF function.